Hey there. So, you've got an intro to law exam breathing down your neck and you're starting to sweat? Don't worry, we've got you. In the next few minutes, we are going to cut right through all the noise and give you the core concepts you absolutely positively need to know.
And let's be real for a second. Those textbooks can be brutal, right? I mean, it's just page after page of dense legal theory, complicated cases, and a ton of Latin terms. It is so easy to get lost in all the little details and completely miss the big picture your professor actually wants you to get.
So that's what we're here for. We've boiled everything down into this super quick explainer. Honestly, think of this as your high-speed review session. We're going to hit the most testable topics and give you that shot of confidence you need right before you walk into that exam. So you ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, first things first. It sounds almost too simple, but you have to be able to answer the most fundamental question of all. What exactly is law?
Here it is, the official textbook definition, straight from the famous Black's Law Dictionary. Now, the key phrase you got to lock in is binding legal force. What does that mean? It means these aren't just suggestions. These are rules with teeth. You have to obey them or there are real consequences. Anything from a simple fine to something way more serious. Now, beyond just defining law, you are for sure going to be asked what it's supposed to do. And this slide, this is your answer. Law is there to keep the peace, protect our rights, and give society a stable, orderly way to evolve. You're going to want to keep these 6 functions in your back pocket. They really get to the heart of why we even have a legal system.
So, if that's what law does, the next big question is, where does it even come from? See, every single law is built on some kind of philosophical foundation. And understanding the 2 major schools of thought here is, well, it's crucial. This is the central debate about the very nature of law itself.
And the fancy, testable word for all this is jurisprudence. Don't let the word scare you. If law is the set of rules, jurisprudence is just the study of why those rules exist and what gives them any power in the first place. It's kind of like the thinking behind the thinking.
And this brings us to one of the biggest conflicts in legal theory. On one side, you've got natural law. These folks believe law comes from some universal moral order, a higher power, or a sense of universal justice. Think of the U.S. Declaration of Independence and its unalienable rights. That is pure natural law. But on the other side, you've got legal positivism. Positivists say, whoa, hold on a minute. Law is just what the recognized authority, the government, says it is. Whether it's moral or not, that's a totally separate conversation. So the easiest way to remember this for your exam is right here. Natural law is about what the law should be, and legal positivism is about what the law is.
And this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it's the perfect real-world example of natural law in action. He was arguing that disobeying an unjust law, like segregation laws, wasn't about disrespecting the law. No, it was about appealing to a higher moral law. That's the very core of civil disobedience. And it's a powerful way to see this philosophy play out in real life.
Okay, so we've got all these laws, but are they all equal? No way. Not even close. The best way to think about our legal system is like a pyramid. Some laws are the foundation, and everything else has to rest on top of them. Understanding this hierarchy is absolutely essential.
At the very bottom, the absolute bedrock of everything, are constitutions. We're talking about the U.S. Constitution and your state's constitution. They are the supreme law of the land. Any other law from any other source that goes against the Constitution is void. End of story.
Now, sitting right on top of that constitutional foundation, you have statutes and treaties. Statutes are just the laws passed by legislatures like Congress. And treaties that have been ratified, they carry the exact same weight. They have to obey the Constitution below them, but they outrank any court decisions made above them.
And finally, at the very top of the pyramid, you have judicial decisions. You might hear this called case law or common law. These are the rulings from judges, and they're super important for interpreting the law. But here's the key thing to remember. They are always subordinate to the layers below. A judge's ruling can never, ever violate a statute or the Constitution. So how does this whole common law system actually work? Well, it works through a principle with another one of those Latin names you just gotta know. Stare decisis. It literally means to let the decision stand. It's the core idea that courts should follow precedent, the decisions from earlier, similar cases. This is what makes our law stable and predictable, so it's not just based on the whim of whatever judge you get that day. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. All these laws we've been talking about, they operate in 2 totally different arenas, civil and criminal. And I guarantee you, you absolutely have to know the difference between them. Okay, so civil cases are usually disputes between private people or companies. Think of things like contract disputes or personal injury lawsuit. Criminal cases, on the other hand, are brought by the government, the prosecutor, on behalf of all of society against someone who broke a law. But for your test, look at the two most important rows here, the burden of proof and the remedies. In a civil case, the plaintiff just has to prove their case by a preponderance of the evidence. It basically means it's more likely than not that they're right. But in a criminal case, the prosecutor has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a much, much higher bar. And why is there such a huge difference? Just look at the remedies.
It's because the stakes in a criminal case are infinitely higher. You can literally lose your freedom, your liberty, and in some cases, even your life. In a civil case, the worst that usually happens is you lose property, which almost always just means money. So remember this, freedom versus property. That's the core difference.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground really fast. So let's do one final rapid-fire review to lock all these concepts in. This way, you can walk into that test feeling totally prepared.
Here it is, your final checklist. Number 1, the philosophies. Remember, natural law is what law should be, legal positivism is what it is. Number 2, the hierarchy. Just picture that pyramid with constitutions at the bottom. 3, the arenas. Civil law is about money, criminal law is about freedom. And finally, let's just nail down that vocabulary one last time.
First up, common law. That's just the law made by judges in their court decisions, kind of filling in the gaps that the written laws don't cover.
And common law is built on precedent. Those are the past rulings that guide future ones. And that, of course, is the whole idea behind stare decisis.
And finally, a statute. That's simply a formal written law passed by a legislature like Congress, and it always outranks common law. You master these terms, and you are going to be in great shape.
And there you have it. You've now got the fundamental building blocks of the entire U.S. legal system. But here's the thing. The law is never static. It's always changing. So the crucial question I want to leave you with is this. As our world gets more and more complicated with things like AI and global social media, how are these foundational rules going to be forced to adapt and evolve? That's really for your generation of thinkers to figure out. Now go ace that exam. Good luck.